Nute Gunray is one of Star Wars' most overshadowed characters. He played a crucial antagonistic role in the prequel trilogy, but we tend to forget that, since he's not nearly as flashy or memorable as Darth Sidious and his apprentices. But Nute Gunray was still a very important part of Sidious's grand plan. So important, in fact, that Sidious personally engineered Gunray's rise to power. Gunray was one of Palpatine's first and most important pawns, and in the years leading up to the Battle of Naboo, practically his whole career was engineered so that he would better serve in that role. In this video, we'll be telling the story of Nute Gunray's rise and why he was so important to the Sith.
Attention, Sergeant on deck!
The key to understanding Nute Gunray, and indeed most Neimoidians, is understanding how Neimoidian younglings were raised. Neimoidians were native to Neimoidia, a planet in the colonies with a humid and generally unpleasant climate. However, the only Neimoidians that actually lived on Neimoidia were royalty, hive mothers, younglings, and those at the very bottom of the Neimoidian social ladder. Virtually all other Neimoidians left their homeworlds as soon as they could, moving to one of the many Neimoidian colony worlds. Most Neimoidians only returned home when absolutely necessary. Despite the general distaste Neimoidians had for their homeworld, nearly all of them were born there. Neimoidians were born as grubs and remained in this larval state for most of their early lives. Neimoidian grubs were housed in large communal hatcheries on Neimoidia where the hive mothers fed and cared for them. But these grubs weren't treated very well. On the contrary, they were expected to fight to survive. Neimoidian grubs were provided with limited supplies of food, forcing them to viciously compete for every meal. Grubs were highly encouraged to be treacherous and greedy. The most successful ones were those who not only out-competed the others, but deliberately hoarded more food than they needed, starving out their competition. Grubs that hoarded food like this matured faster and were able to escape the hatcheries sooner than the others. Nute Gunray, as you might expect, was one of the hoarders. He left Neimoidia at a young age, maturing early and signing on with the Trade Federation. His experiences as a grub taught him to be treacherous, cowardly, and unfathomably greedy, like most other successful Neimoidians. Though he escaped the hatcheries at a young age, he would continue to live like he was still in the hive, driven by an insatiable desire for more possessions to hoard. It wasn't nearly as Neimoidian dominated as the Trade Federation we're familiar with. Originally, the Trade Federation was an extremely diverse organization led by beings from a wealth of species, the Neimoidians included. But as the Trade Federation grew more powerful, its Neimoidian faction grew as well. This Neimoidian faction became intertwined with Neimoidia's government, such that the highest ranking Neimoidian in the Trade Federation was automatically granted a seat on the Neimoidian Inner Circle, the planet's ruling body. This led to an influx of Neimoidians into Trade Federation ranks, an influx that Gunray was part of. Nute Gunray signed on with the Federation as a junior trade officer, but his ruthlessness allowed him to quickly rise through the organization's ranks. His biggest break came when the Trade Federation reviewed Pulsar Supertanker, a subsidiary corporation, for expulsion. The outcome of the review happened to depend on Gunray's testimony. Gunray, of course, saw opportunity in this and recommended the expulsion of Pulsar from the Federation over, quote, malicious disregard of profit and charitable donations lacking discernible reward. Pulsar's expulsion opened up a seat in the Trade Federation Directorate, the 7-member executive board that ran the Federation, a seat which Gunray promptly filled. The Directorate later elected the newly promoted Minister Gunray to serve as its senator. As far as Gunray could tell, his career was going quite well. Unbeknownst to him, however, his successes had attracted the attention of the Sith. In their day-to-day guises as Hegor Damask and Senator Palpatine, Darth Plagueis and Darth Sidious became acquainted with Gunray and determined that he would be an ideal Sith asset. He was a ruthless and effective businessman, a coward, but also a being who could be strangely resistant to intimidation, all qualities that made him useful but controllable. His ambition and greed knew no bounds, which would allow the Sith to lead him on pretty much indefinitely. The Sith believed they could make him do whatever they wanted without risk of Gunray exposing them. 44 years before the Battle of Yavin, the Sith engineered the Stark Hyperspace War, hoping to eliminate potential threats and advance Gunray's career all in one fell swoop. That year, the Stark Commercial Combine began attacking Trade Federation transports carrying Bacta, throwing supply chains for the vital resource into chaos. In response, Minister Gunray requested and gained permission from the Senate to greatly expand the Trade Federation's private droid army. Meanwhile, Ieko Stark, the Combine's leader, arranged to meet with delegates from the Republic and Trade Federation on Troikan to negotiate an end to the crisis. But Gunray was pressured into leaking the location of this conference by Randolph Tarkin, an avid militarist and leader of the Outland Region Security Force, which he planned to use forcefully to dismantle the Combine. The result was an absolute mess. The conference on Troikan turned into a battle between a team of Jedi, Stark's private troops, Gunray's droid guards, and Tarkin's overzealous sector military. Thanks to the Jedi, the Stark Hyperspace War ended with the defeat of Ieko Stark and the dissolution of the Stark Commercial Combine. It also resulted in yet another promotion for Nute Gunray. Gunray claimed partial credit for the defeat of Stark's forces, as his droid guards had participated in the battle and he had tagged along with the Jedi through the whole affair. For this, the Directorate elected him as the new Trade Federation Viceroy. Gunray was quite pleased with himself for securing that promotion, but little did he know that he had very little to do with it. The whole thing had been engineered by Darth Sidious, who had goaded Tarkin into starting the battle and had arranged for Gunray to score a promotion out of it. Despite securing the top position of the Trade Federation, Nute Gunray continued to seek greater power. Even though he was Viceroy, he largely served at the whim of the Trade Federation Directorate, with whom he steadily began to fall out of favour. Gunray believed, and not without reason, that this was due to anti-Nemoidian prejudice. He was the only Nemoidian on the Directorate. The other seats were filled by a Gran, a Celestin, and 4 humans. All 6 of them, he believed, begrudged a Nemoidian having more power than they did, especially as the Trade Federation's lower ranks and senatorial delegation became increasingly Nemoidian. By 33 BBY, Gunray believed the Directorate was on the verge of removing him. That same year, he received an anonymous gift, a red spotted pilat bird, a rare creature that was a symbol of wealth and power in Nemoidian culture. Gunray collected rare birds, as he collected pretty much everything, and was greatly pleased with this gift, though he was curious as to who it was from. He got his answer when Darth Sidious contacted him, revealing himself as the gift giver and promising even better gifts in the future. Though Gunray was at first wary of Sidious and unwilling to partake in the Sith Lord's schemes, the promise of wealth and a surprise promotion won him over. Nute Gunray agreed to ally with Sidious, a fateful agreement that marked the beginning of the end for the Republic. Shortly afterwards, Sidious dispatched his assassin, Darth Maul, to Dorvala, where he terrorized the local mining companies into uniting under one banner. The resultant monopoly, Dorvala Mining, granted the Trade Federation mining rights on the planet and ceded its representation in the Senate. Viceroy Gunray claimed the credit for the whole thing, which brought him back into favor with the Directorate and allowed him to consolidate his power. Later that year, the Trade Federation came under attack from a pirate group called the Nebula Front, which declared war on the Federation and its allies. The Nebula Front proved adept at capturing Trade Federation freighters and dispatching their droid guards, and seemed poised to upset all trade in the Outer Rim. Gunray was terribly worried about this, but Darth Sidious promised him that it was actually an opportunity. On Sidious's instructions, Gunray used the Nebula Front attacks as an excuse to commission a new, more powerful droid army, contracting Bactoid Combat Automata, Bactoid Armor Workshop, and Hal Chal Engineering to create it. By the end of the year, the Trade Federation had come into possession of a vast new army of Geonosian-made battle droids with full armored support, plus new droid starfighters. On Gunray's orders, this new droid army was tested against Wookiee colonists on Alaris Prime, and many of the Trade Federation's Lucre Hulk class freighters were converted into battleships. This granted the Trade Federation far better odds against Nebula Front, but also caused uproar in the Senate. At the same time, over the objections of Trade Federation Senator Lot Dodd, Supreme Chancellor Valorum and Senator Palpatine proposed renewed taxation on trade in the Outer Rim. Valorum believed the Trade Federation had gotten too out of hand, and that the chaos caused by the Nebula Front attacks evinced the danger of its monopoly on Outer Rim trade. As objections arose and the Senate descended into chaos, Palpatine proposed that a trade summit be held on Eriadu, the homeworld of his friend Wilhof Tarkin, to settle the matter. Nute Gunray, his lieutenant Rune Hako, Lot Dodd, and the rest of the Trade Federation Directorate attended the trade summit, escorted by their shiny new battle droids. But just as the summit began, disaster struck. The new battle droids turned their blasters on the Directorate and killed everyone except the Neimoidians. The Nebula Front was blamed for the attack. Indeed, the Nebula Front itself believed it was responsible. In truth, however, Darth Sidious was behind the surprise execution of the Directorate. The death of his rivals handed Nute Gunray total control of the Trade Federation, which he used to make the corporation into a Neimoidian monopoly. He filled the Directorate with his cronies, including Lot Dodd, Rune Hako, Deputy Viceroy Hath Monchar, and the captain of his new flagship, Dulce Dauphine. However, Gunray's success in seizing control of the Trade Federation was undermined when the Senate passed the proposed trade taxes. Gunray was outraged and complained about the taxes in a call with Darth Sidious. The Sith Lord stoked the Viceroy's anger and proposed that Gunray responded by using his new army to blockade a planet. Gunray immediately agreed to the idea and proposed the target be Eriadu, the site of the summit disaster. Sidious, however, had a different target in mind, Naboo, the homeworld of the senator responsible for the new taxes. So, that's the full story of Nute Gunray's rise to power. But what do you think? Would you like to hear more about Nute Gunray, or maybe some of his Neimoidian allies? Let us know all that and more in the comments section below. And as always guys, thank you so much for watching, and I hope to see you in the next video.